it's up to us to look at the people we're talking to, know how to talk to them, and present this in a way where you can say, look, we're making a bad decision here. And if you did it, then you did it. And you've done that exercise, and you've done it without pissing anyone off. It's a success. Whether or not they decide to come to your side or not, the exercise of caring enough about the company that you say, hey, this is going to be some bad stuff.
Welcome everybody to the Talking Roadmaps channel. Today I'm joined by special guest Kenan. Kenan, introduce yourself, my friend.
Yeah, I'm a product guy. I love to build stuff. Before that, I was a physician, studied Chinese medicine. Before that, I was an artist. And at some point, I took, my artistic vision and applied it towards a solution in healthcare. And I got infected with the bug of building stuff. Trial by fire. I had to just create a software product without knowing much about how to do that, and kind of cut my teeth along the way. Over the last, to 12 years, I've, come a long way.
If you're enjoying the channel, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and give us a like. Amazing. And serial entrepreneur within product, within CPO, CEO, different capacities there. So I think we're going to have lots to talk about. Kenan, let's go straight into kind of talking about, what do you think is the purpose of a roadmap?
To me, it's a harmonizer. It is a harmonizer because it takes alignment as a first kind of requirement, at least how I think it should be done, is that there's an alignment between what a customer needs, what the business needs, and you're putting those into a plan, getting buy-in, and then communicating that through this beautiful thing called a roadmap. There are good and bad parts, but the roadmap is a harmonizer because it should show what we're doing and why. And when you have that, you have context and you have clarity, and you can get people to feel more connected to the work they do. So I think they're amazing. I think they can be terrible too. I guess it depends who's doing the roadmap.
It does. There's two bits that I really loved straight off the bat, what you said there, a harmonizer. I've not heard that term for a long time around roadmaps, maybe because often there's not harmony, but that's the intent, right? The harmonizer, I think, I love that. The other bit that you mentioned is around the customer and the business needs. And I think both of those are important. We're here to solve a problem. Yourself with Alignwith and the other products that you've worked with and companies, they're there to solve a problem, but also we need to run a business. And you need to have that balance of both, because if we do everything that the customer wants, the business might not be successful. But if we did everything the business wants without the customers, we might not, be existing for much longer if we always focus on ourselves.
And I think that, if you want to keep solving problems, you need to keep, a healthy business so that you can continue to do that. And you're 100% right.
Yeah, absolutely. So if it's a harmonizer, what is the audience? Who are we harmonizing?
It's the company. It's the village. I always see a company in my head as less of a pyramid and more like a bond, like people holding hands around a bonfire. We are all as important as each other. Again, if your customer support team walks out the next day, you're pretty screwed for a while. And those people often aren't valued. So roadmaps have to speak to everybody. The problem is, I think where people get caught up is they check the box and they're like, I did the roadmap. Here it is in Slack. Now it's your problem. And, I think that happens when the culture is fucked, I don't know if you have to beep that out.
No, we'll probably be happy to keep that in. But I think when the culture is just completely messed up, right? Is just, we've got problems there. We've got bigger problems than even a roadmap, the culture and the people.
And I think that the roadmap can serve as a way to improve culture, because it's not the roadmap itself. It's the process of creating that roadmap that creates that harmony, because you're spending the time to get understanding and buy-in from different stakeholders. And the process of doing that and communicating that and taking the time to talk to these different parts of your go-to-market team or C-suite is what creates that harmony. The outcome is the roadmap. It's like, here it is. Here's of all those activities we just did. The thing is that a roadmap shouldn't look one way. And I think that is where things get a little dicey, because, if you break it into two camps, you've got, let's just call it like technical and non-technical. And even in non-technical, you have high detail and high level. And so if I show a roadmap to your average CEO, the way that I show it to a go-to-market team or a marketer, I'm going to lose their attention relatively fast. You have to look at who you're presenting to. And you're saying, okay, well, I need to speak their language. And if I'm presenting to C-suite, I'm going to be focused primarily on something that looks more like high-level bullet points with, very concise and clear reasons for the things we have, why we have them, the data to support them, and talk about the risks and rewards of all the things that we have up on the roadmap. And now, if I show that to a customer support person, it's not that valuable, right? Because their job is to figure out, how am I going to support these products that you're putting out, and I don't understand much about them. So I think that showing it another way that has more detail, more visual components, more things that convey a message with enough information to be valuable, but not enough to create cognitive overload.
Right. Or even oversharing, right? Sharing too much.
Exactly. And I think that we're not taking our designers and saying, hey, here's this presentation, can you create one for, C-suite? They're busy, right? They're like, well, should I do that or continue working on this project that we have to get out the door, right? So, it lands on product a lot of the times. And to do that, and product is often stretched thin and looking for a moment just to do some R&D, just some research and development.
Talking to customers, some discovery.
Communication materials, right? So often what happens is like, here's the thing, I did it, and that's it. And that's where you start to lose buy-in, because people not everyone understands what you're doing and why you're doing it. And different personas, different stakeholders have different ways of seeing the world. And so your roadmaps have to be presented in a way that's going to reach them. If it's a communication tool, right? If you believe that it is.
It's a communication tool, it's an alignment tool, and that's a nice segue actually into your company at the moment. So Alignwith, this is a big problem, because I think people will do the checkbox, think they've done the roadmap, it's about them, not about the audiences. But the alignment is a big issue, and you've spotted a niche in that area there, where it's kind of like, look, we can no longer show different audiences the same thing.
We can't expect people to always come to our side. And if we want people to have affinity for us, we need to come to their side and show them that we're willing to do that. And that is by taking the time to create those communications. The thing is, they take a lot of time. And what we're doing at Alignwith tackles, that problem, we're a product management tool that takes that technical information and product, your PRDs and all that stuff, and creates instantly shareable content that you can give to your go-to-market teams, right? So that they understand what you're doing and why with full context, but you don't have to spend the time sitting there designing it, creating it. Even content, we have AI generated text fields to help them write content and write prompts and fill all that stuff out. So transforming PRDs into instantly shareable presentations or roadmaps or release notes or anything related to communication.
Yeah, and in fact, I had the pleasure of you sharing some of this with me in a previous talk that we've had, and I was really impressed with the kind of the newsletter type, friendly type, polished web type experience that I got from the tool, where it was actually showing me things that in a way that I wanted to read, was simple. It was targeted for me. It shared with me what I wanted to see. And that took me quite by surprise, because I've never really seen another tool do that. And that's one of the things that kind of had Alignwith stick out in my mind, was I felt like it was generated for me because it was.
A lot of times we're taking this technical information and we're like, okay, this is how I've spoke to the developers. Now I have to speak to other people. And really you're just taking that and you're oftentimes representing it in another technical form. For us, design matters. It's what allows people to feel that something is better. There's lots of studies where people, you'll have the same exact software with the same capabilities. One looks better than the other, and everyone thinks the one that looks better is better, right? So, we're taking this, laws of UX kind of very seriously in what we do, and we're taking that technical information and we're bringing it into a format that is beautiful and familiar. It's designed or after a landing page of a website. So like not just another slideshow.
Yeah, that was definitely the vibe that I got.
Web page, and that feels familiar. And a lot of what we do is not showing everything all at once. We show things in ways that as that curiosity strikes, you can expand and collapse information. That way, when you're looking at it, you don't feel like, oh my God, I can't read this right now. You click on those things and they expand. And yeah, so that's, another few examples of like, how we take the laws of UX, and, apply them to roadmaps and release notes and everything else.
And in fact, let's talk a little bit about everything else. So what do you feel is the relationship of a roadmap to, say, vision, strategy, objectives? Do those things coexist? Should they coexist?
Absolutely. I mean, for me personally, you don't really, you could say you have a roadmap if there's no strategy in there. But most likely there are much bigger problems if that is the case, that you've got to fix, at the company level, which might be, especially early stage companies, being reactive. They have a new product and they don't want to lose a customer, and they're zigzagging. They know where they need to get, but they're working on the latest fire. And so that whole roadmap is basically just putting out fires.
Yeah, it's one big piece of fire.
But make that a strategy. Put out fires, okay? Like that way you can attach it to something. But I think that making sure that you have a strategic direction and that the things you're building are helping you get there so that you're moving true north is part of the exercise of road mapping to me, because that informs kind of the foundation of what we need to put in there, right? It's like the base stock of the soup. It's the dashi in, miso soup, right? Like, yeah, miso, we're talking about miso, but actually, the base is dashi. And what we need to do is that has to be the company strategy. And that company strategy should be a mix of, like we said earlier, what things have we chosen that helps move the company forward and delights customers? And so you have to find this medium and go, okay, that is going to do both things. This is what we're going to do, and it's going to help us, and connect that item to something strategic, one or multiple parts of your company strategy. But like, because when we talk about strategy, we're creating this bucket, but there are two strategies, right? There's the company strategy and there's the product strategy. So all you have to really do is connect to the product strategy, because the product strategy, if, written correctly, is already connecting to the company. So you don't need to like worry about that. You need to just say, okay, how do these items connect to the product strategy? And if you can't connect it, let it go. And explain, and if there are people who attach to it, depending on what the company looks like, this is where you need to go to them and start communicating in a way where you can bring them to your side. And to bring them to your side usually requires that you have some data to back up the reason, because that's also another harmonizer. I don't know if you've been in the situation as well, but it's like, there are these times where, people feel very passionately about something and they really care about it. And, and when you start to show them the metrics behind it, they begin to make their own choice that that the direction that you're trying to take things makes sense, without creating an argument. Like the data kind of ends the arguments because it makes people kind of second, oh, you know what? Yeah, that other thing you're doing, that is going to have a bigger impact and you have the data to support it. Or, I've often asked people who feel passionately about stuff to, help us, build a case around this and let's pull together the data. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I think that's always the thing that keeps a culture around product healthy, is like not assuming you're always right. And so, you could be relying on data that's not that reliable if you haven't questioned it hard enough. But maybe you really want it inside, so you maybe don't want to question it too much. You're like, okay, well, let's really, prove it. Like, let's work together to figure out, like, maybe this is a bigger idea. And I think that leads also into this idea that I've often struggled with roadmaps, especially with engineers, is a lot of my experience with engineers is like, show us the roadmap for the year. I'm like, okay, well, it may not be the same. It most likely won't be. And I think that's, part of culture as well, which is creating this understanding that data is going to be the driver in the decisions we make, and data may come later. And that might mean we need to swap out one thing for another because it does more for the customer and more for the business. And I think that's often a place where things can create friction, when it's like, well, you have to tell us so we can plan and, all this stuff. So I'm like, there just has to be this comfort with some uncertainty.
Yeah, there does. I mean, Roadmaps Relaunched, one of my favorite books on the subject, talks about how to set direction whilst embracing uncertainty and things like that. And that's such a succinct but great way of saying it, is like, how do we, be able to say this is where we're going, but still say, look, these are some of the things we know. These are the things that we don't know. The one bit that you mentioned in there that I really liked was kind of not going back to stakeholders and saying no, but it's redirecting that energy of maybe the pet project or the thing, not even a pet project, but the thing that they want to build or to work on, and saying, look, being objective about it. I'm a big fan of being data informed, having empirical evidence. Itamar Gilad's confidence meter was a great one for me in terms of looking at things and being able to say, okay, well, we're doing this based on anecdotal feedback all the way through to, we've done user research and having that factor into there. But even if it comes back that a stakeholder's just asking for something and they don't have anything more than a hunch, not going back and saying no, I think part of that is that, the align with and being able to have that conversation with them to say, actually, look, it doesn't really stack up too well with what we've got on the roadmap at the moment, but help me to understand it. It's not a no, it's just help me to make this the best it can be so it's up against everything else, because as product managers, we're here to de-risk things and we're here to deliver value. That's what we want to do. So help me to make a case for it. And I've not heard it in the way that you explained it, but I really liked it.
Yeah, and I think it's part of our job to bring people to a decision without having your ego get in the way, because it's easy to let that happen and be like, damn it, this is how it is. This is the way, like it just shut the door. I have spoken some Mandalorian references, but it's one of these things where like you have to, like, depending who the stakeholders, I often hear like product managers go, the CEO is, has all these crazy ideas, but I think there's a part of you that has to step back and go, we have a business with product market fit based on these crazy ideas. It may not be in the nice, neat way you want it, but that is not necessarily how the company was created. So get closer to those stakeholders, create better relationships with them. I think that people are afraid too. They don't want to lose their job and they just want to check the box and go, I'm not shaking the boat. That's what they want. That's what they want. Again, it goes back to a cultural thing. Can you create an environment where you can question the founders and have the founders made that comfortable to do, and have you hired the right people, who are okay. One of the big interview questions I have is very much around like radical candor. Like, can they handle? Because in environments, especially with startups, there's a lot of passion. I think people need to say, because it's easy to get like triggered and get upset. And when someone's like fired up, but yeah, I think you have to take a step back and go, well, why the hell are they fired up? They freaking care. That's the best thing you can have, is someone who's fired up and like really just angry we're not building this thing. It's like, all right, let's, that's great. That's because they care about the business and they care if there's something that they really truly believe in. I think that's often, a perspective thing. As a product manager, you just get pissed. Like they won't listen to me, right? Or whatever. Well, that's just how it is. You slam the door on them, and that's going to create more friction in the business, So, but yeah, I think radical candor is an important thing to hire for. Like,
no, it's good. It's good to hear, and that's obviously one of your techniques, and it's important, right? Because, like you said, we're all moving towards the same thing. We all want the same thing, which is success of the company and to solve customers' problems. So that makes sense. Let's dig a little bit into design of a roadmap. So rather than a big line of fire that we talked about earlier, it's kind of like everything's on fire and things like that. Do you what are kind of the key elements or content of a roadmap? What do you like to see? And maybe even with Alignwith, what does Alignwith actually help clients with?
Yeah, I think the key elements to the roadmap is, if we just like stay high level, one, it has to be based in strategy. So the roadmap itself, right, whatever it is, there needs to have some semblance of a direction. Otherwise, whatever you put in it is random. And if you equate it to like a rocket ship with uncalibrated boosters, it's not going to make it to orbit, right? Like it's going to like be all over the place. So that's like one of like the core, like, recipes in that, is having that. Obviously, the items you put in there, as we've talked about earlier, should be predetermined that they meet those requirements of moving the business forward and, delighting customers. Another thing is that it's easy to understand for that stakeholder. Going back to that design portion, right? Like, is this going to reach the person I'm talking to or that's supposed to understand it? And, I think that, those are kind of like three like high level important components. Now you have different ways of looking at it. You have initiative focus and timeline focus and all these other ones. So I think that also just kind of plays into like, who are you talking to and which type of roadmap do you want to show them? I often hear, especially in product, like this anti-timeline thing. I'm not a fan of it, honestly. I don't subscribe to an anti-timeline. I actually have and enjoy timeline roadmaps. Where it's like, yes, you have initiatives and you can create these buckets and these themes, but at the end of the day, if we do not deliver, the company will fail. Whether it fails quickly or whether it takes a longer time, it's not going to meet its objectives because the things in that roadmap are strategic drivers. If you think about it like that, and if you cannot release those strategic drivers to make the impact that you've bet on within a certain amount of time, you're in trouble. So I think that, having, and I think a lot, especially go-to-market teams, I think everyone but product wants to see a timeline roadmap because they need to prepare. And they also need to understand that it is living, breathing, and is going to change, right? I even if it won't change, I tell them it's going to change because I want them to be prepared that if we find an opportunity that is bigger and it matches something we want to remove or one or multiple objects that fit into the scope of the amount of hours we have, development resources, all that stuff to build the stuff, that we will swap it.
I guess one of the common anti-patterns that people talk about is they don't like to see dates on the roadmap, but we've just talked about that. And I absolutely agree with you. As a product manager of a commerce basket and for handsets and support for Vodafone, dates were absolutely imperative. If I missed a legal or mandatory date, I was in hot water. So we can't use that one. Then both of you and I kind of agree that actually it can be important. But are there any other anti-patterns or bad practices that you see on the roadmap?
Definitely. I'd say one is I often see that there isn't a clear strategy. And unless you have the talent on the team or someone is providing that team with a vision, it is hard to come up with a strategy. You have to have the right talent to think strategically and kind of look further out. Things are in there to appease people and aren't evidence-based. Okay, well, this is going to get them off my back. And that shouldn't happen.
We need to be comfortable having harder conversations, I think, rather than the classic product manager, it's on the backlog or it's on the roadmap to appease. I think we need to be more comfortable having evidence-guided, data-led, honest, frank, radical, candid discussions with our stakeholders, right?
It keeps coming back in this loop to like, that's a cultural thing. It's like, can you do that? Do you have the right environment to do that? Are they, I've definitely talked to some PMs that, are in a situation where they're like, I just need to keep the lights on and keep getting paid. I'm not rocking the boat. I always feel like that's unfortunate. I'm like, you got your job is to kind of show them they're making the wrong decision here. And it's like, well, it's their decision and that's that. I think that's, that does come down to a cultural thing. Like it's not an environment where they allow pushback of ideas. And I've been there where, the company has said, hey, we like straight talk, and then you straight talk and they're like, how dare you? And you're like, oh, I won't do that.
That's not the straight talking we meant.
I will not tell you you're making a bad decision again. So I think, it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to do it. And I think, yeah. So, a lot of like we talked about earlier, like a lot of checking the box. It's like, I think a lack of desire or time to create roadmaps that are going to speak to your audience. I think that's a bad practice, right?
Yeah, I think sometimes if that's the situation that you find yourself in, the roadmap can be more harmful than good. It would be better to not have a roadmap than to create one incorrectly. And I think that's where a lot of people come up to getting these challenges with roadmaps, falling out of love with them, not feeling that they're needed. I think that's where a lot of it is just a misunderstanding of what the roadmap should be. And that can even be a misunderstanding or a misalignment between the person asking for the roadmap and the person creating it. Because if they both had a common understanding of what it was that they wanted to see, then actually the alignment would be there.
Absolutely. And I think it's part of that also, like, if you know that ahead of time, and then you won't feel so hurt when you spend all this time with this like very detailed, beautiful roadmap and you hand it to, C-suite and they're like, I can't look at this. Like, can you give me some freaking bullet points? And you're like, ow, but if you know that ahead of time, you create multiple versions and say, okay, this is going to be for seats. Just create a couple buckets and spend the extra time to create a couple of versions that are going to have impact, right? Where your outcomes are going to be that people feel connected to this vision and what's in that roadmap. So yeah, I think those are, some bad practices. Also, I think it goes back to what we just said also, which is the roadmap just serves the company's needs. I think that's probably a bad thing. And I've seen a lot of that happen where they're prioritizing like internal projects that don't bring much value, although those eventually need to be done. But the prioritization for that isn't always in line with what's best for the company and the customer. So I think that's also a cultural thing where it's like, oh, they said they want to do it. We're just going to do it. I'm like, yeah, but you're not going to launch XYZ and you're not going to have that impact you've been planning to have. And do they understand that by doing this, well, they made the decision. So I think, again, coming back to this idea that it's up to us to look at the people we're talking to, know how to talk to them, and present this in a way where you can say, look, we're making a bad decision here. And if you did it, then you did it. And you've done that exercise and you've done it without pissing anyone off. It's a success. Whether or not they decide to come to your side or not, the exercise of caring enough about the company that you say, hey, this is going to be some bad stuff or potentially maybe bad stuff. And are you okay with that?
You've obviously got a lot of experience in the product world, the road mapping world, and what you're building with Alignwith. I'm curious whose advice on road mapping and product management you listen to, because obviously you're kind of building a tool for these people. So who really resonates with you out there in the world?
I mean, I think like you, that the product roadmaps, the book was very influential for me, especially in the early days when I was trying to pull us out of a build trap. So Melissa Perry wanted to bring that up. Like that was very influential, the build trap. It's kind of one of these things where as the company was scaling up, we had a lot of that, stuff on a roadmap that was like just putting out the latest fire, right? So, and we had a strategy. We actually had one, but we weren't reaching it because we were zigzagging. Because we're like, oh, we want to go here. Oh my God, there's this thing. And then you just go off to the left and then you come back and you're like, all right, recalibrate. We're going to go, this other thing. And you start prioritizing stuff because you don't want to lose a few customers. And so being brave enough to stick to strategy and losing a few customers along the way is something I've learned to stomach, over time. But I think a lot of, the experience that I've gotten was through books. And at some point, like reading it and going, oh, we've got that problem. I'm going to try what they suggested, or I'm going to research another methodology to tackle this and see what our outcomes are and not be afraid to just try it. And it's going to be better than what we have. And I think that's been the experience over the years. Is like, as you try these new things, they sometimes expire based on scale. Like they no longer work because the organization got bigger. They worked before, and now we have to find new frameworks or create our own that are going to solve the problem. A big, I don't know if you've heard of the book Subtract. That was the more recently influential book. It is about improvement through subtraction, a product book per se, but it is a product book.
There's product learnings deep within.
Yeah. Laws of UX. That's a big, another influential book on me, which I made each one of the PMs, designers, everyone, even if they said they read it, we have like a book club. We read it again. We take time every 2 weeks to talk about those books and share those ideas and, kind of make that, a part of constantly improving, right? Because I think there's so much time like spent doing the work, but not improving your skill sets because it's like, where's the time? So you have to kind of make it a part of the experience in your product team. Like, hey, let's pick a book,
I love that. And actually you've got different levels of the company all learning together from the same material, because it's not just the product team. Like you said, it's cultural, it's C-suite, it's different levels within that company as well. So I want to finish up. I've got two last questions for you. So the first one was, if you had to distill your philosophy of road mapping into just a couple of sentences, how would you describe it? And you've already used some killer words at the beginning here, so if you want to reuse those, then do. But what would your philosophy of road mapping be?
They have to make sense to your audience. It's like the primary thing. They have to be rooted in strategy. It doesn't matter the type of roadmap. It doesn't matter if it's timeline or initiative or whatever. And the items you place in there need to be carefully chosen to drive the company forward and make customers happy.
There you go. I was going to say the customers in there as well. Fantastic.
There should be a conversation with the organization and an agreement in the way that we operate that roadmaps can and will change. Because and not just that, but roadmaps can and will change, and the additive to make that roadmap flexible is data. If someone can come to me and go, I've got this other thing that's going to have twice the impact of this other thing that we have. Okay. The data creates enough confidence that they're right. We get buy-in from everyone else because we have data to support that. And then we all make the gamble, we make the bet and swap it out. Talk to engineering and, make sure it's, feasible or trim it back to where it can fit, right? It's important enough to minimize that V1 to where, okay. Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. It's always on my mind. It's like, we're dealing with big complex problems and it's like, all right, what if I take this away? Oh, that works. All right, let's do it. So it's always trying to figure out how to improve things by subtraction as well.
Yeah, definitely. So look, the last question I have for you is we've talked about roadmaps and the fact that alignment is so important. I know yourself and your co-founders are already working on this problem as well. Tell us a little bit about Alignwith, and also let our audience know how people can find you, because a lot of what you've said today has resonated with me and I'm sure it will with them as well. How can they best find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm definitely there. You can also reach out to me at Kenan, Kenan, at alignwith.io. In terms of what we've built with Alignwith, it's essentially at its core product management tool. It's an AI-powered product management tool that takes all that technical information and creates ready-to-share content for your go-to-market teams, for your stakeholders. So that applies up and down the board from the story of the company, right? Where things started, where you are now, where you're going, to your company and product objectives, to roadmaps, to ideas, to internal release notes, to customer-facing changelog. All of these things we make so much easier. Essentially, on our platform, you could literally grab a Google spec. We'll turn it into a presentation. That presentation can go to a release. You click one button, you get one-click release notes. You push one more time, and you can push it to a customer-facing changelog. So it saves a lot of time from having to sit there and create this content, where you basically just play with our preloaded prompts, or create your own prompt to refine that information and make sure it sounds the way you want it to sound, and publish. So yeah, that's kind of what we do. We are taking this idea of how do we bridge the non-technical and technical teams to bring them closer to the business and the product. And to do that, we need to speak in a way that our stakeholders can understand, or different stakeholders can understand.
We need to communicate, we need to align, and it's in your company name.
The key to that is making sure you're doing it while not giving a PM or the product team more work, because that is the scariest part of wait, I'm going to adopt this new tool. Now I've got to do more work to maintain stuff. And we've made sure that that's not the case.
Yeah, it's massively important, because I think it is more impactful when you have those different, that different alignment, those different views. It is more impactful and potentially it's worth going to do that extra effort or have a tool do it for you for minimal effort so that it really resonates with each of your target audiences. And that's really the point here. All right, Kenan, it has been an absolute pleasure talking with you today. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Guys, thank you so much. Kenan, thanks again. I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.